could you give me my iPad for next so I can remember what the title of the paper was. So that's sort of doing my homework, yeah. When I was doing my PhD in the late 80s, of course, the Journal of Fluid Mechanics was the journal that of record that I was looking at and reading papers from. And I do remember, looking at the new volumes when they came out, sort of thumbing through them. And I actually remember, even before that, when I was an undergraduate, actually seeing it in the university library, because I was, interested in fluid mechanics, in terms of being interested in cars and planes and such like, and why football's curved, all this, and swimming, these were the sort of things I sort of knew of fluid mechanics. But when I started my PhD, it was then that was clearly the aspiration to publish in the journal. And just before this interview, I looked back. I knew my first paper had came out my first JFM came out in January '94, I think, in the volume 258. But it actually, looking back, it was submitted almost precisely 30 years ago. It's incredible. Like 30 years ago next week is when I submitted it, and a very different era, right? So you printed it out. It was printed out. It was posted to Cambridge. The figures were quite rough. Versions were originally produced by a very old-fashioned printer. But then they were smartened up by a draftsman in the department that made the curves smooth and so on. It was a stability calculation, and it was like the curves of constant growth rate were smoothed up. And then you just waited for an envelope to come with the reviews and then respond to the reviews. And I do remember being so the buzz, the excitement of getting the first reviews and having the dawning realization that I could probably deal with these reports, and they probably would. It wasn't being rejected out of hand, and then that being confirmed when the final thing came out. It was just amazing. Amazing feeling, and then to actually see it, the physically in print, my name there in the journal was just, it really sticks with me very much. And I have been fortunate, and I've worked with many very very talented people, and I've always aimed to publish in the journal. So there's been several subsequent, or many subsequent experiences like that. It's always been part of my professional career, and even before my involvement with the editorial board, I would always look at the new volume coming out, and then subsequently more, I guess, look at the web page about when the new volumes were coming. But then I got my present academic position here in Cambridge in 2005. And then after a few years, I was sitting in my office one day, and Gray comes down and talks to me and asked me would I be interested in effectively doing the market research for the focus on fluids idea, right? So he asked me would I be interested in launching it, and to then kind of do a dry run, look at the previous year and try and could I see that once a month, was there a paper that seemed exciting that you might want to get another author, another person to put into context and sort of explain why it was. And that just seemed so interesting to me, because I've always been, I think, very interested in fluid mechanics as a subject, right? So it wasn't just the areas of research I'm particularly interested in. I really enjoy going to conferences. I really enjoy the fluids seminars in the various departments I've been in and hearing about other areas. So that sort of overview, trying to find here's something interesting in biofluid mechanics or in turbulence or in non-Newtonian flow, or it was really an interesting phenomenon to do that dry run, and then for a few years to actually do the focus on fluids program. But then But then Gray, in his wisdom, thought that it was something that you didn't want to do forever, right? That it was sensible to have a new viewpoint, and he was proved exactly right, because then Anne Jewell took over from me, and did a great job on the focus on fluids, but inevitably had a slightly different viewpoint about how to do it. And then and so I then went on to being one of the Rapids editors, i.e. handling the papers as they're being published and finding the referees and so on. And then of course, Anne is now a member of the editorial board, and Jerome Neufeld has been taken on, is now the next focus on fluids. And I think that's a very sensible idea, to have that turnover. And so I was then a Rapids editor for a while, and then in 2020, I think it was late 2020, Gray told me that Paul Linden was going to step back from being one of the deputy editors, and would I be interested in being one of the deputy editors? And of course I said yes. And so then that basically turned out to be a kind of apprenticeship, as I've mentioned before, that this was an apprenticeship to be the deputy editor for a while, and then when Gray decided to step down, I became the editor. So that's really, I've ended up, it's been effectively a 30-year relationship with the journal, from that first paper on paper, and now, I mean, it's just so interesting to think that the last paper that I submitted to JFM. My student submitted, my wonderful PhD student Sam Lewin submitted to JFM, is a paper that has this notebook functionality within it. So to go from having a jagged-edged figure that needed to be dealt with by a draftsman to be of the quality to be in JFM, and I remember it was really kind of a struggle to get the LaTeX and so on in the early 90s, to now this seamless online submission, and the biggest issue is about how do you manage to have the file of the right size with the data embedded in it to be able to be uploaded. It's really interesting how, while the technology has changed, the value of the academic publication and the interest in reading those articles has kind of stayed the same, even as the medium has changed, the message has remained. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, submitted. It was just 22nd of January, 1993. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's almost precisely 30 years. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, there we are.